So in our next unit, we're going to talk about something called interest-based problem solving. And the idea is this is a process that can help you when you're mobilizing and you're working with members of the community to identify underlying interests and then identify options and solutions and be able to document them and make them be sustainable long term. So we're going to talk about the definition, why we use it. We're going to look at what we mean by interests. You know, what is it that we're saying? The 6-step model of the process, and then we're going to have a role play where you get to practice this. So the definition of interest-based problem solving is that it's a structured process to enable a group, often with multiple stakeholders, to craft solutions by identifying and working with all of the parties' underlying needs and interests. So the rationale behind this is that it gives the group the ability to focus on one issue at a time and really focus in on it. You're able to explore all of the underlying interests that everyone has. You're open to all possibilities and options and opportunities. And then through the solutions, you're able to satisfy everyone's underlying interests that are at the table. And then you use those agreed upon criteria to create that solution. So when we talk about positions and interests, I use positions and interests to describe, to help you understand what interests are. Is anyone familiar with the difference between the two? Okay, so one way that I like to look at it is to use an example where there are two siblings and they're fighting over an orange. One of them says, I want the orange, no, I want the orange, you got the last one, but you had 4 yesterday, so they're just fighting over this one orange. Their position is, I want the orange. So the parent comes in and says, okay, well, why do each of you want the orange? And one person says, I want to eat it. And the other person says, I want the rind for a recipe, I'm making muffins. So their positions, as you can see, were incompatible. If they both wanted the whole orange, but they both couldn't have the whole orange. Yet because one wanted the inside, the underlying interest, and the other wanted the outside, they could both get what they wanted. And so it just, for me, that highlights the difference between the two. So the interest is what you say you need, but why it is that you need it. Why is that important? You know, why do you want that? When you're exploring something, it's what you want versus why that something is important. I like to think of it as behind every complaint is a request, even though it may not be spoken, and then sometimes you have to ask, okay, so what's your request? And behind every position is an interest. Every time someone says they want something or this is what I need, there's a reason why. And sometimes it's your job as mobilizers to ask that question because other people at the table may not ask it. And a lot of times we even assume that we know the answer, but we really don't. So you may ask, what are your needs or motivations? What pressures are you under that we're not aware of? And then for your own self, what are your underlying interests? Being clear about those too. Also, understanding the underlying interests can help emphasize the shared the joint nature of the problem. Sometimes you may say that you want different things, but when you talk about why you want them and the interests you have, you might identify and realize that you really are after the same thing. You just had different ideas of how to get there. And that can really be help with relationship building too. So we're going to look at one process, interest-based problem solving, where you're focusing on those underlying interests to get you through from identifying an issue through having a solution. And like I said earlier, this is just one process of many different processes that you can use while facilitating a group. But we wanted to give you this one as an example of something that you could practice and try out. So next we're going to go through each step.